Hey there, I'm Davi,
And I'm Carolyn.
and we're just two Asian women having candid conversations about whatever the hell we want to talk about with an intersectional flair.
That being said, today we're going to talk about the rise of anti Asian hate crimes in the United States. So get comfy and stick around. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Just Two Asian Women podcast. So, quick announcement. If you don't know who I am, my name is Carolyn, Laotian American, Gemini, blah, blah, blah. And we recently made an Instagram.
Yes.
Yay! For this podcast. It's called Just Two Asian Women podcast.
hmm
That's on Instagram. We have some cute posts up, so would totally recommend. We have some informational posts going up.
Easier for you to contact us instead of like emailing us like back in the Stone Age. You can just DM us or comment on our posts.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you want to like interact with us more, like, yeah, go ahead and follow. What do you have to lose? You're already
Exactly.
listening.
Exactly. And this is Davi. I'm
Mhm.
Cambodian American, and it's a Friday, and we
Mhm.
recording on Friday. I love recording on Fridays
Me
because
too. The
we
weekend
get
is
to
like
catch
all
up.
freed up. Yeah.
Exactly. The weekend's all freed up. We are busy during the week, so we don't really get to talk to each other that much.
Mhm.
So like we finally get to catch up.
Yes, I've definitely ignored some of Davi's calls because I'm like, I'm working right now.
She ignored like three of my texts, one
I
phone
know,
call,
literally. I reply like
but
4 days later. Yes, I'm that friend.
it's about I was not offended. I was like, she's probably just in her work mode, which Carolyn does get into, and it's okay. Gotta do her
Thank you,
thing,
Davi.
boundaries. I accepted it,
Yeah.
but it was like since Sunday, it was like a Wednesday. I was like, Carolyn, I need. When are we recording? I was like, I need
Oh
to
yeah.
my
Like we need to like
calendar.
I actually need an answer.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Good that you called. Good that
Yeah.
you called. So we're gonna talk about something way more serious than Instagram and me not replying to text messages.
Yeah.
And that is about the anti-Asian hate crimes happening in the United States, all over the world too, honestly, but specifically in the United States because we are here in the United States.
hmm
And yeah, I guess I just want to start off like, Davi, how do you feel about it? Like, what's going on in your mind?
In the beginning, I was really detached. I was just like, all right, yeah, Asian people get killed. Like, it's not new. It's just now being, covered. And then I got on Instagram again. I re-downloaded on my phone, and then I just kept on seeing more and more stories. But then it really got to me with the stories of the Atlanta spa shootings because it was just like so much. It was racism, misogyny, and then sex workers, all just a bunch. And it just triggered some memories for me
Mhm,
about when I'm an Asian woman, obviously,
mhm.
and when I people have sexually harassed me and my friend ex and family members were silent.
Yeah,
Oh, and it just really pissed me off, and then it just made me really sad like a few
yeah.
days ago.
Sorry that happened, by the way. That
Yeah,
sucks.
no worries. But yeah, how do you feel?
I also feel weirdly detached.
Mhm.
Obviously, I feel sad because I am a human with empathy, and
Mhm.
especially so because it's like with my fellow Asian folks. Um, and but at the same time, I feel weirdly detached because I mean, maybe it's a coping mechanism, or it could be some other things. It could be internalized racism. I don't know. Call me out if you see it. I don't think so, but let me know.
Mhm.
And I feel like I'm Laotian American, and whenever we discuss like Asian American things going on, it's like I know I'm a part of that, but I don't really feel like I'm a part of that
Mhm.
because like there are not really any other Laotian Americans around me. Not that I've actively gone out to look for them, so I'm
Mhm.
calling myself out as well. Um, but it's usually like East Asian centered, or when it is Southeast Asian, centered. It's about Vietnam, which is valid because Vietnam War was a big thing.
Mhm.
Um, so to me, it's like, oh, I'm sorry that's happening to you, and I will like stand with you, and that sucks. But it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't really hit home for me yet. Again, it could be a coping mechanism. It could be a whole plethora of things, but it doesn't really hit home for me yet because I don't feel like a part of the conversation as a Laotian American Asian.
Mhm. And that's totally valid, you know? Um, not to say, like, we don't empathize or, like, care, but
Yeah, of course not.
yeah, it's like I haven't really cried or, what people expect some people to feel when they are upset. It's more like
Mhm,
just anger. It's just like, "What the fuck? Seriously?" And just I don't know. I would say, like, maybe I'm desensitized. I was
mhm.
telling Carolyn earlier, I was like, "It's not a new news. This is not new
Yeah.
news." Like, like I'm sure your parents have my experience this, like, people have always been racist towards Asian people. The fuck?
Mhm.
Like, my people always people had told my family members, like my aunt, uncle, parents, speak English,
Yeah.
or growing up, we have a Korean, sorry, a Korean person who owns a beauty salon. Two people assaulted him in two different instances.
Oh my
May
God.
Yeah, maybe he's a business owner, or maybe because he's Asian, or maybe both. Like, but still, two times.
Yeah.
And whenever I saw him, I was just like, wow, like it just broke my heart, at that point, because I knew him personally, of course. Like, it's just growing up our entire lives is with knowing that in mind. It's and we see it come out to play with more media coverage. It's sad, but I think I'm also detached. It's just like, all right, now, so what? Like,
Yeah.
how are we gonna improve this when fetishization of Asian women have been going on for centuries?
Mhm.
Like, how are we gonna improve this when, like, everyone's fucking silent
Mhm.
about reporting shit like this, when
Mhm.
Asians are erased from the story?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, and it's only happened a few days ago. So I think I'm just processing, to be honest.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And, just because we're not like crying or whatever, it doesn't make us like harder than anybody else or like
Right.
better. And I would also say that it is weird. I don't know. I don't know if that's the correct word, but I suppose I'll use it. It's like weird to see, like, technically you're at the center of this like thing that's happening, like you and I and every other Asian, even though we don't feel like it is, because again, very East Asian centered, which
Yeah.
again, I hate that East Asians are being attacked. That sucks to say the least.
Yes.
But it's weird because it's like all these posts are going around like on Instagram, and it's like, did you know that people hate Asian people? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I knew that already,
Mhm.
actually. Yeah, that is how I feel about it right now. Of course, I'm doing what I can to like speak out about it,
Mhm.
donate, conversate about it.
Mhm.
Um, I still need to check in with all my other friends about it, see how they're
Same.
doing. I know you checked in with me. I thought that was really nice of you.
Mhm.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I at the end of the day, I guess I am like still processing, but to sum it all up, I'm processing. I still feel erased from the narrative
Yeah.
as a non-East Asian person. And I'm sure my brown Asians out there and non-East Asian out there can semi understand what I'm talking about too. And of course, my heart goes out to every person who's been a victim of anti-Asian hate like that. People's comfortability with Asian racism is like scary.
Yes.
Mhm.
It's like we're not even people. We're like animals you kind of just forget about.
Yeah, like we're the butt of the joke.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. But the joke, forgotten.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just like, you know why? It's because of this model minority myth, which I hate because I feel like as soon as Asians have accepted that, like white people created it and accepted it,
Mhm.
Black and brown communities accepted and resented it because if you don't know, the model minority myth was created in the 1960s purely to combat the Black and Brown liberation movements happening in the 60s.
Yeah. They used it as a wedge between black people, brown people, and Asian people. It's like, oh, well, these Asians come to America, they're doctors and nurses and engineers, and they
Mhm.
don't cause any ruckus. But black people, what have they done? You know, like that's the narrative, and a lot of people believe it.
Yeah.
I think too because um, like Filipinos came here and like they tend to be nurses, right, in hospitals. But like even then, there's still like impoverished communities in the Filipino community.
Yes,
And
definitely.
right, and it's a myth. The myth is so dangerous because I think, like you said, people, even ourselves, or it's not ourselves, people, Asian people have accepted it. Some people have.
Yeah, I agree. Like I remember hearing that from my parents, like, oh, you could do it, Carolyn. We're the model minority, we're Asian.
Oh,
And I was so like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Um, but I hate it because it's always like intrinsically attached to this lie
mm-hmm.
that Asian Americans make more than white people. And that's the number that every person wants to throw around. Like, well,
Wow.
you're okay because you make more than white people. Racism is over for Asians, okay? And it's like, one, I hate that like the end of racism is like solely tied to our like capitalistic like
Yeah.
economic output, which it's not. I wish and I hope and I want all of my fellow BIPOCs out there to be rich and fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
But just because you are, it doesn't mean that fucking racism is over.
Right.
It's a lie because the diaspora of Asian Americans is made up of like hundreds of people from different countries and even more ethnic groups within those countries. So when people say like, "Oh, Asians make more than white people, Asian racism is over. They're basically white."
Mm-hmm.
Like the people who make more than Asian people, wait. The Asian people who make more than white people, I could count on one hand. Japanese Americans, Malaysian Americans, Taiwanese Americans, Korean Americans, Indian Americans. Maybe there's like one or two more up there, but
Mm-hmm.
literally everyone else, like, no, they're down there.
And that's true. If you look at the bottom ethnicities that make the least amount of income, there's a huge disparity in the Asian population. Like, I think in the race of Asians, it's the biggest disparity of income compared to other
Yes,
races.
literally. And Laotians and Cambodians, we're fucking down there. We are
Yeah. Dude.
living well below the poverty line,
Oh,
statistically
yes.
speaking. Like the fact that my family, my Laotian family, is like chilling, like defies all odds,
Yep.
you
Same.
know?
Yeah. Like
And
if
uh
sorry, if you were to look at the chart, like I want to represent people. Like, sorry, this is not the best accurate representation, but yeah, like people forget about Hmong people, Vietnamese,
yep,
Cambodians, Laotian. Sorry if I'm Thai. You know what I'm saying? They forget
yeah.
about the ones who came over with in the boat,
Hmm.
like just recently, like relatively recently, like the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I've talked to some of my friends about the anti-Asian stuff going on.
Hmm.
And the conversation kind of like drifted towards how our parents felt about it.
Okay.
So before I go into that, I wonder, like, have you talked to your parents about it or like siblings or relatives about it?
Um, my brother brought it up. He's like, "Hey, have you heard about the Atlantic shootings?" But I just told him, "Hey, I did, but I don't feel like talking about it." He's like, "Okay." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay,"
Yeah.
but I don't feel like talking to my parents about it just because, like, I'm just sad. I don't want them. I don't know. I just don't want to bring it up with them because it's like I imagine they also feel the same way. They're like, "Yeah, we know," you
Yeah.
know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Yes. I talked to my parents about it, unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, it didn't go. I don't know. I don't know what I expected. Maybe like some type of like a point where we come to some understanding. But um my parents, I'm sorry, my fiance Tito says I'm so mean to my parents on these podcasts. And look, I am. So I will preface with that, okay? Like I recognize it. Am I gonna stop? I don't know, probably not. I love them. Okay, they're gonna be fine. um, like they it was really weird because I actually legitimately didn't know how they were going to react. Like they did not react well to BLM.
Right.
I'm not going to get into that. We already made an episode about that.
Mhm.
And with this, I was like, maybe they would actually care because it affects them. But they have the idea, they have the colorblind approach, you
Oh.
know? Yeah, it's really interesting.
Mhm.
So they're like, they started off the conversation and like, we're Americans. And I'm like, yes. Yes, we are. And they started talking about like my mom was like, oh, that fucking crazy murderer, blah 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 person.
Mhm.
And I hesitate to use the word crazy, but I am
Right.
quoting her.
Mhm.
Um, like he was just fucked up in the head and he had a sex addiction and that's why he shot people. It could have been anyone, you know, it just
Oh.
happened that they're
Oh,
Asian. And
no.
I was all like, oh, and she's all like, you know, they politics just want to make it into a hate crime so they could advance their agenda. And I was like,
What fucking agenda?
Dad, yeah. She believes that like we're sowing division in
By
America.
talking about race and bringing up race all the time.
Yeah, they're like the people who are like, if you bring up racism, you're racist. Like they are legitimately those people. You
Oh
know,
my god.
the example they gave is like, you know, in America, when they see like a black man walking towards them, the first thing they're gonna say is that they're a black man. Well, why does he have to be black, huh? And I'm like, I think it's just a descriptive factor, really. And they were like, exactly. And I'm like, oh my god. I did more listening than anything because if you've listened to the other podcast where I'm very mean about my parents, you would know that my mother steamrolls everything and she really, really loves to get on her soapbox about politics. Um, her questionable politics. So that's how they felt about it, you know. And I'm like, do you like feel scared for like our grandmas, you know, like
Mhm.
their moms?
Mhm.
Like, no, they don't go out of the house. And I'm all like, are you like worried
Just
about
chill,
like
chill.
your and I'm like, are you worried about like yourself? And my dad is all like, no, I'd fucking beat them up. And I'm like, okay, good for you, dad. Good for you. Love that. I love that for you.
Yes.
And my mom's like, no, I'm like, every day I go out and I just like stay vigilant. And I think that's a valid point, you know,
Mhm.
like, and I do want to touch on that too. Like, she does make some good points where she says that she's extra vigilant. Like, she recognizes that. She doesn't think it's a problem, but she
Mhm.
recognizes it.
For sure.
And she also said that, like, oh, it's always been a thing. I'm not surprised.
Mhm.
Like, of course, people are racist towards Asian people. People are racist towards everyone. Um, and that's how they felt about it. But to touch on her feeling like she has to be more vigilant, I also feel the same way. I was thinking about that because when I go out, I'm usually with my fiance Tito,
Mhm.
who I'm sure you all can assume is a man. Um, and the fact that I'm with him like makes me feel safer, or the fact that I'm in proximity with a man makes me feel safer. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with feeling safe with your partner,
Mhm.
but I'm saying like it I wish I could feel safe without him.
For sure. For sure.
Mhm.
Like having to think of all these scenarios how to protect ourselves when we're outside in public by ourselves versus
Yeah.
like what a man has to think about, you know?
Yeah.
Um or yeah. So we're a target for sure. Like I think they were saying that the Asians who are tend to be target tend to be older and tend to be women. Like not surprised,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting how your parents had that approach to the topic because it's very much to me it sounds like a little bit conservative in terms of like, well, it doesn't happen to us, so it's not a problem.
I feel like they've definitely been like conservative converted like very recently. So
Oh, okay.
because yeah, I'll leave it at that
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah,
know I'm
yeah,
being really mean about my
yeah,
parents.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think reasonably so, but
Yeah, for
anyway.
sure, for sure. But yeah,
Um
I
one last thing I wanted to mention
um
is that like I was talking to my friend, my good friend about it, And she said that her parents like felt the same way basically, and she speculated that her parents like felt defeated, right?
Oh, mhm,
They're like, "Oh, what's the point? It's always gonna happen." But I don't know if I agree with that. Now, do I empathize with the fact that like the parents in this context, like they had to leave their war-torn country? They probably knew someone who died. It fucking sucked. I can't imagine like the literal trauma that they had to go through.
mhm,
But like I recognize that at the same time, it's a little irrelevant to the Asian American struggle. If like my friend says like, oh, maybe our parents just feel defeated, but like how could you feel defeated if you didn't like fight for that in the first place?
mhm.
Like you didn't even start. Like you don't get to feel defeated.
Yeah, I mean, I can get that, but at the same time, it's kinda like they didn't, like you don't necessarily, like, have to have fought for it to feel defeated because it just weighs on you every day, like the news, hearing it from your friends,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying?
I suppose.
Yeah, because I feel like people are, like I feel like us are pretty strong-willed, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like we don't get easily defeated, but some people, I don't really know how people like, some people don't cope, or I don't say they didn't cope, but, like, some people admit defeat, and
Yeah.
and this is that, whereas, like, I kind of positive, I'm like, like, if we do things about it, we create a system, yeah, there can be change and we can, what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I agree. I agree with that, but it just like doesn't jive with me when like someone feels like, to use the word again, defeated, and
Mhm.
then they're like, what's the point? I'm gonna bring you down to.
Oh, I definitely agree with you on that, like, I don't like it when people are fatalistic,
Mhm.
you know, yeah, no, for sure, but I can definitely see, like, why some people are defeated, just I don't know, it's their not their temperament, but it's, like, what their perceived, like, limitations, I guess, of how much they can
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, but I just feel like the Asian American like struggle right now. I mean, I'm glad people are waking up to it. Like
Yeah.
people have been, like I said, comfortable with racism towards Asians. I feel like for a very long time. That's an observational statement. That's not a statistical statement. So I won't say that. Um, but I'm glad that people are talking about it.
Mhm.
And I feel like you and I and any other Asian really are within our right to like critique some of the nuances of the Asian American movement.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Um, as it moves forward.
I agree because, like, with, like, any movement, there's, like, some people's perspectives that are moving forward and then some stories and perspectives that are being, you know, that are quiet or not being told.
Yeah,
Um, like, I would try to think about it. It does need to be more inclusive
yeah,
because, it is mostly East Asians and, South Asians, experience the same, like, repercussions of racism and
mhm,
sexualization.
mhm,
Like, looking at the Atlantic shootings, or sorry, looking at the Atlanta shootings, they are Asian women. However, like, all the stereotypes that people have about Asian women, you know, apply to Southeast Asian women too. Like, there's literally, like, traffic rings in Southeast Asia and, like, weird ass pedophile sexual white men, Western men go to Southeast Asia to fucking rape, girls and
yeah,
um, have sex with, or not, I don't wanna say have sex because 'cause they're not, it's like they don't want it.
right, yeah,
Yeah, to exploit women. So, I wonder how many of those stories that happen to, like, Southeast Asian American women have happened here, but it just hasn't been publicized or covered.
yeah,
So, yeah, I don't know, it really the narrative has to widen and, be more inclusive because, and I get it, like, to a certain degree, like, there aren't as many Southeast Asian people in the US as there are East Asians, but at the same
mhm,
time, so,
yeah,
like, because when we think of, like, numbers, oh, only 10,000 Cambodians in Long Beach, I'm just throwing an example, I don't know for sure, versus,
yeah,
like, 100,000 Chinese. S There's still people. What happens is, like, numbers sometimes dehumanize
yeah,
people. Well, there's still a trend, you know what I'm saying? Even if it is fewer
mhm,
Cambodians versus, like, Chinese, I'm saying, or Koreans. there's still a trend and still a problem that needs
Yeah.
to be squished.
Yes, I agree. So, like, helping to bring our stories to light, I think would help a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I know it would help me a lot as an Asian myself,
Yeah.
and I think that counts for something. Um, and to touch on like the fetish, sorry, I always have trouble saying this word,
Okay.
fetishization of Asian women in particular. It happens to Asian men too, or like non-binary Asian people, but with women in particular, like I hate how yellow fever is like a quirky thing you could have. Um, I hate that they're like, "Oh, you're Asian, you must be like quiet and demure and submissive," but like a fucking freak in bed,
Yeah.
or talking about the tightness of our genitals.
Exactly. I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's gross. And look, I don't partake in a lot of like exploitative conversations. Exploitative?
Hmm.
No, exploitative. Wait, that's the same word, different
Hmm.
pronunciation. I mean, like, I don't talk to like men or any other uh, people of perverted mindsets about their views of Asian women because they're not going to say it to my face. But just based on the most searched term on Pornhub
Hmm.
and all that stuff, like I'm would I would make a very good educated guess that people see Asian women as like an object, as like this exotic thing,
Yeah.
as this uh trophy, blah blah blah, stuff like that.
Yeah. For
Dehumanizing us essentially.
Oh, absolutely. It's all it's disgusting. It's like all the media, like anime with like sexualized girls and
Yeah.
big ass titties and thin petite. It's just like really gross, and it just stems from like a lot of the like sexist, um, you know, racist history of like military conquest,
Yeah.
in Vietnam, Korea, having comfort women,
Hmm.
um, which also I hate that term. It's
Yeah.
like I understand, like the history is that when like men would go into the cities and like relax,
Yeah.
they're traumatized, they're stressed, they are in position of power. Like imagine, I'm not gonna imagine,
Hmm.
they abused these women
Yeah.
for hours a day. You know what I'm saying? Um, we should probably have a trigger warning.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They abuse these women for days and like I'm sure they objectify them. They didn't speak the same language, so why would they care what they say? They don't.
Hmm.
And they just use their bodies for their own pleasure. And that's just awful. Like they people do sick perverted things when they have PTSD and on top of that they don't see the person as a human. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it pisses me off and how that stereotype of sexualized subservient women Asian women have like still is pervasive, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I feel like the fact like the name that has been adopted is quote unquote comfort women when in fact that type of name like plays into the idea that we need to appease men and their feelings.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, we just need to comfort them. Like, they were literally being raped, killed, murdered,
Yeah.
so that some
Feel
men could get
good.
off. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that they could feel better about themselves. They're really sad, guys.
I know. I'm sorry you fucking sign up for the military. Okay, some of them, like, oh, no. Like, and to go back to the Atlanta shooting, the stupid ass police officer who like did the press conference and was like, "Oh, the guy was just having a bad day." I was just like, "What?"
Yeah, that was a choice.
Yeah, and the update is that he got removed from being the spokesperson. He didn't even get freaking fired. dude. I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like there's always been like a uh lightening or like a euphemism culture around like atrocities that happen to Asians, right?
Mhm.
Uh, you have like the Immigration Act of like 18 something or 19 something. Basically, like it didn't have any special name to it, but it basically barred all like Japanese immigration to America is literally what it is, even though it didn't say the word Japanese anywhere.
Mhm.
The internment camps, again, was not specifically directed towards Japanese people, but it was for Japanese people.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
And the fact that they call it internment camps in the first place, quote unquote, is already like a euphemistic like idea of what actually happened because it's a concentration camp. And I know that's a controversial term because some people think it's lightening what happened to like the Jewish people during the Holocaust. Though I call those like the Nazi death camps because they went there to
Oh,
die, unfortunately.
that's more accurate name for sure.
Whereas concentration camps are, I feel like concentration camps were like a euphemism for Jewish people and other people who were persecuted under the Nazi regime in Germany.
Mhm.
Um, that travel ban in 2017, like, didn't have a specific name to it, but it was literally like the Muslim travel
Mhm.
ban.
Oh, let's talk about that hate crimes. For people who are like for the annoying ass people who are like, "Oh, you guys always make it about race, like it just happens to me why they happen to be Asian." Blah blah blah. It's like, dude, literally he went to like all Asian spas. And I know it's early in the investigation, so they can't prove right now it's a hate crime. It can definitely be a hate crime. Sorry, it isn't a hate crime on race. It's definitely a hate crime on gender. It's really stupid that the media or what's it called? The press briefing was like, "Oh, we talked to the shooter, and he's told us it's not a hate crime." Like the fuck? You're gonna take credibility of this person who freaking murdered like 8 people or 7 people?
Yeah,
Like, that does not make sense. Criminals, the worst people, are on their best behavior. Of course, he wouldn't fucking tell you it's a hate crime because they'll get charged more for a hate crime.
that's true. Well, it depends on the killer because some people want to be recognized or like let
Oh.
their manifesto out there. I watched a lot of Criminal
Oh, I
Minds,
see, I
so
see. I guess in general, like with the normies and the
yeah.
normal killers.
Yeah,
But like usually if they have a lawyer and the lawyer's like, "Hey,
that's
don't
true.
don't say that because they're Asian or don't say because they're women."
Just to make it clear, I would bet like $100 that it definitely was like a hate crime.
Mhm.
Um, even if he didn't know it.
Yeah, even if he didn't know it.
Like, not every racist action is like overt, like he you could say like, oh, he just wanted to go to those massage places because he's been there before and he likes it and that's what he knows. Um, but he still chose to go to an Asian establishment. He
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm gonna go to an Asian. He did not go there being like, I'm gonna go to an Asian place and kill a bunch of white people. Like, no, he went to an Asian place and he's like, I'm sure like he knew that he was gonna
Like
kill a lot of
3
Asian
of
people.
them. Yeah, like 3 of them.
And like I get it, like technically you need to have like some solid hard evidence to prove that it's a hate crime, either through like some weird manifesto that they've written or like by a confession or something like that.
Like a diary or something.
Yeah. But like in my opinion, I'm pretty sure it's a hate crime. I don't know if they're going to be able to prove it. That's a whole different thing,
Right.
but I think it's a hate crime.
Shooter says that he has a sex addiction. So he's like kind of implying, all right, well, I can't get off, so I'm gonna hurt those. Like there's a connection to it. In addition to is the race with like Asian women being, heavily sexualized. And then on top of that, they're the gender.
Mhm.
So there's just so much going on. And I just imagine people are criticizing or defending him on all of these different fronts. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but we're here to break that shit down and be like, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to rationalize like what these mass murderers are thinking. I think it's quite simple in that they just wanted to kill somebody out of pure hatred.
Yeah.
Um, and it sucks that these Asian women and the two other victims have to be the recipient of that hatred.
Mhm.
To have something so like tragic happen, um, it's hard to not open your eyes to how like racism towards Asians can violently manifest.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm really hoping what comes out of this is that, the family's friends get justice, and that we know we've had a racial reckoning.
Yeah.
Um so, we just hope. I don't know, there's like it just feels like it's early in terms of like there's early coverage of this now, and I just feel like it's in the beginnings and they're still investigating. So I don't know. I don't know what to really expect. I mean, I could be pessimistic or realistic and predict that he's gonna get like a few years or
Mhm.
be maybe declared mental or something.
Yeah.
I really don't know. And I really hope it's none of those. I hope he gets like 100 years and then like two life sentences or,
Yeah.
something harsh that they do to show people this is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. To say the least. And I feel like we might be at the cusp of like some neo Asian American movement. I don't know if that's the official term. Like
Hmm.
the movement is pretty amorphous at this point, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we don't have like I'm not comparing, I'm just saying that we don't have a centered organization like how Black Lives Matter is a literal organization
Yeah,
that
for
the movement can
sure.
be centered around.
Right. I
Um
feel like the one that's really popular right now is AAPI.
yeah, stop AAPI hate.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would say so too. Yeah. I think they're definitely at the forefront of it. And especially because they're doing like a lot of the reporting in the United States.
Mhm. Yeah, they do really cool data and collect a lot of information. I think I volunteered with them one time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, to like get more Asian voters to vote.
Nice.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
dope.
I feel like as the movement like continues to grow, we talked about it earlier about like wanting it to be better and not just with representation of like all Asians. Um, like having people realize that like it's time to fight and Asian Americans have been like fighting like all throughout the history of the United States. But model minority myth, fetishization, and perversion of our cultures, as defined by like white people and white supremacy institutions, like made us believe that we are people who are quiet and subservient, and we're like, oh, we don't need to do anything, it's fine.
Mhm.
Like the earliest known kind of like community of Asian people in America uh, was in the early 1500s. And it was when some Filipino people, they were on transport from like some Spanish ship or something to the Caribbeans to do fucking quote unquote indentured servant end quote
Mhm.
stuff. But they jumped ship and they landed in New Orleans, Louisiana in the early 1500s. And that was
Wow.
um, one of the first Asian communities in America. And the
So
reason
cool.
I know, right? The reason why I bring it up is because when I think of Asian American history, I'm like, okay, the Yellow Power Asian American movement of the 60s.
Mhm.
Very 50s, 60s. Oh yeah, World War II, 40s centric, very 20th century um origins going on. But to find out that Asians have been in America since the 1500s, like prior to the inception of the United States of America,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, wow, that's powerful. Like, we were not here beginning in the 40s. Like, we've been here. We were not here beginning when the Intercontinental Railroad was built by the Chinese people that were in
Mhm.
America. We've been here forever
Mhm.
and we've been fighting forever. Chinese Americans went on strikes when like the railroad was literally being racist towards them.
Mhm.
Japanese Americans didn't like that they were being put into concentration camps in the 40s. They fought against that. Asian American became a word in the 60s to build the Asian American movement in tandem with the Black civil rights movement. Like, we've been doing this forever.
Mm-hmm.
So this new movement, like, is it a reckoning for non-Asian people? Yeah, I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Asian people out there, it's good to know your history. Like, we've been feeling this for a long time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's good to keep fighting and to ask the movement to be better, especially with combating anti-Black sentiments.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
hate when people compare BLM to like the Asian American movement right now. You're like, you were there for BLM. Why aren't you saying anything about Asians, huh?
Oh my
And I'm all
fucking
like,
god. Okay, that's actual division.
literally. And I'm like, oh my gosh, shut the fuck up. You're not cool. Okay, you're
Yeah.
not gonna guilt anyone into doing anything. All you're doing is like sowing and watering and giving sunlight to the seeds of anti-blackness that already has been growing
I
in the
know,
Asian
right?
American community.
Yeah. That's something not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not to do when you're trying to build a movement. Don't bring other
Yes.
minorities down.
Yes.
Yeah, I think as whatever this is going on right now, whether it's going to be a start of another movement, another Asian movement, what I would really like to see, I don't know, it's really hard because I feel that since Asians have experienced this or like know of this type of racism, I'm not going to expect, my fellow Asians to be like, to have to post stuff. People are dealing with this shit and it's like hitting home for a lot of people. So I'm not gonna be like, oh my God, why aren't you posting anything? Da, da, da. So I hope I don't really see people knocking each other for that.
I agree.
Mhm. I see some of my friends who are not Asian posting stuff. That's good. I want them to keep on doing that. I want people to stop making Asian stereotypes, and it hurts men and women.
Yeah.
Um, what do I want to see? I want to see people like do more research about Asia. Oops, Asia. That's not just like East Asia. I want them to like, know there's Cambodia, know that there's Laos, like, and know that we're not a monolith, and just basically do more research, like, and try to understand us more and
Yes.
our Asian American struggles
Yes. Yeah,
and
definitely.
cool things about us too, not just our struggles, but like what we're cool at and what we're good at.
Yes. Things to celebrate and things to like acknowledge as trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say to touch on that bit where you say that like you don't hold it against any Asian folks who don't
Hmm.
post about it. I agree. And maybe some of you who've been listening to our podcast for a while know that we have said that we have strong feelings against people who don't post anything about BLM. And you might be thinking, oh, that's hypocritical. Why? Well, let me tell you something. I didn't say it in the podcast, but I will specify now since we're on the topic. If a Black person doesn't want to post about BLM, I like legitimately don't hold it against them because they're out there like living it. You know,
Hmm.
they are living it. They they're thriving, or maybe they're surviving, and they just need support. And I'm gonna support them. And people who are non-Black, I think, should have supported them and should support them.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, with the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, if you're Asian, I'm not going to hold it against you if you don't post anything, if you don't want to make a statement, because you are out there living it already. You live with the inherent fear that someone's going to, like, at the least, like, harass you on the street, at the most, fucking stab you in the face.
Hmm.
Um, so I would greatly prefer that non-Asian folks support us by posting about it. But Asian folks, what they need to do is just like rest, recuperate,
Yeah.
and process.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I don't know. I feel like too. I'm like, I think the reason why I'm processing is because the time when Asian Americans do get media coverage, it's like
Mhm.
I'm like not a little too late, but this is what we're getting covered for. Cool. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of like, all right. It's kind of new to see Asians in the media, but not for good reasons.
Yes. Yeah, it's not the representation we want.
Yeah.
but but it's good in the sense, look, the majority of this is very bad,
Yes.
but it's good in the sense that people are, coming out, speaking out, and recognizing. And I would say my closing ideas, like I said earlier, if you're Asian, like keep doing your thing, rest, recuperate. If you want to stay informed and stay active, please do that. Do whatever you need to do. If you're not Asian, I hope that you'll stay empathetic to the cause, that you'll stay informed, because I feel like there's a lot of like misinformation, or even just like very shallow level information about what's going on in the Asian American conversation. And also to question Western centric or Eurocentric coverage or discourse of Asia, which is another way to say to decolonialize your mindset.
Yes.
I think that's very important, because I feel like the Western built perception of Asia like made it reality.
Hmm.
Like Asian women, like we are not submissive or quiet. Like I have, again, this is purely observational, but I don't recall the last time I met an Asian woman like that, to be quite honest. Not statistical fact, observational fact.
Yes.
But some people like legitimately believe that. I don't know why.
Hmm.
Or they believe all Asians are smart, or like all Asians are good at math, which in the grand scheme of things is kind of like the least of our problems right now, but it's still annoying.
Hmm. Oh, I think my main takeaway too is like everything Carolyn has said, and also just like day-to-day basis, like language, stereotypes, prejudice that you have about Asians or towards Asians. You
Yeah.
know, think about it. Take a think,
Yeah.
take a think, a deep, deep, deep think about it, and challenge your perceptions if you have those type of perceptions. And or if you don't, that's wonderful. Go challenge other people's perceptions about it because we need your help with that shit. It's annoying.
Yes, definitely.
But yeah, folks, thanks for listening. We gotta cover this the serious stuff. So
Always.
we're gonna wrap up today's podcast here. We want to hear from you. How has the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes and sentiments affected you? Message us at justtwoasianwomen@gmail.com or DM us at justtwoasianwomen podcast on Instagram.
And you could find our podcast on Spotify, Anchor FM, and YouTube.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed it, please consider sharing it with your friends. That would be awesome. You'll hear from us again next week. Again, my name is Davi,
And I'm Carolyn, and
and
we're
we're
just
just
two
two
Asian
Asian
women.
women.